This is the IDP After Show.
Hello and welcome to the IDP After Show with me, Jase Abbey. I'm here to bring you yet another IDP preview episode where, as you know by now, every week I am joined by some of the best IDP analysts around to help me break down the defensive players we think have some of the best and worst weekly matchups. And tonight on the Week 9 preview episode, you guys are in for a treat as my guest this week is Aron Evers, contributor and content creator at the IDP Show, and the man who I'm going to describe as the engine behind some of the best things we do over here. Aron, a huge welcome to you, my friend. How do you feel about that introduction?
I mean, I'm going red, my man. Like that is next level. Like not only did we get like contributor, we got and content creator. I thought we might get one or the other, but we got both. The engine. I mean, if I'm the engine that makes a lot of the things go at the IDP Show, we are 100% like a single cylinder, like 50cc, like nifty 50 scooter. Like there is so we're not getting very far if I'm the only engine that's running things. Like there is so much more happening.
The shows we've done before, to my mind, have been some of my favorites. You aren't afraid to tell it like it is, and that's rare. Without any of that sort of like emotion and like self-promotion, you just tell it like it is, and I think that's a wonderful thing. Never change. Let's get into our Week 9 nominations, and let's kick things off by talking about everyone's favorite position in IDP, linebackers. Which linebacker do you think is going to come up big in Week 9, and why?
So I went with Jamien Sherwood. And the thought process behind it is he's already come up big so far this season. He hasn't had that boom game yet. Like he hasn't had a game higher than, and all of the points and everything that I quote are going to be in Big 3 scoring, because I feel like Big 3 scoring it's the scoring I use in all the leagues that I play in. I feel like it's the best. But I'm biased. But it's so he hasn't had a boom game yet. He hasn't had a game over 18 points. But he's been filling in for Mosley. So Mosley suffered turf toe injury in week 2. And then Sherwood came in and had his best game of the season in relief for Mosley in week 2. And then Mosley missed week 3, missed week 4, missed week 5, played sparingly in week 6, played sparingly in week 7. He's been great, Sherwood, in relief the entire time through that point. So he had a 20-point game. Sorry, I did misspeak. In the relief game when Mosley went out injured, Sherwood had a 20-point game. He had 12 total tackles. He had a down game in week 3, week 4, 11.25, week 5, 15.5, week 6, 13.25. Now, Mosley, there was a report that came out on Monday that he was now seeing a neck and back specialist because the injury that this is now a new injury. It's not the turf toe, is now thought to be more serious than initially anticipated. Sherwood has become sort of a revelation, and every time one of these players pops, like a Jamien Sherwood, a Blake Cashman, Bobby O's another one recently in the last 2 years, it scares the crap out of me because I remember sitting here listening to Tom and Sticky talk about these guys as rookies. And like Tom would be like, oh, I'm a big fan of Bobby O. Like, I really think he's going to do something. Does nothing for like 4 years. And then 5 years down the track, it's like, boom, pop. And I'm like, Tom is Nostradamus. It's like it is insane. Like I remember him talking about like Blake Cashman and Jamien Sherwood and being like, these guys are really going to make a difference. And it's years down. Like he saw it before it happened, but it happens, and it's the same thing with Jamien Sherwood now. So yeah, it just sort of scares me. But I think the matchup that they've got against Houston, Stroud has got negligible weapons this time. Nico's not due back until next week. Stephon Diggs has just gone on injured reserve. Dalton Schultz can't run further than 8 yards. Their offense is Joe Mixon at this moment in time. I don't think Tank Dell's healthy from the fractured leg he suffered last year. I think we're going to hear something similar to what Tony Pollard came out with at the end of last season. It was like, well, I didn't feel right until about week 10. I think we're probably going to hear something similar along with Tank Dell because it was a very similar injury. Their offense runs through Joe Mixon, so there's just going to be so many tackle opportunities, and I think we will see another double-digit tackle opportunity game for Sherwood, and he's had, 3 of them in his last 4 games?
Yeah, and it is surprising. Did you see any of this coming? Because I didn't. I still remember when Sherwood was this guy, like, is he a safety? No, he's all of a sudden he's playing linebacker, and you'd have locked in Mosley and Quincy Williams. They were as sure a partnership as if I compare them to 2 others who have proven not to be a sure thing, it would have been like Aluakun and maybe Devin Lloyd as well, right? Poor example as a comparison, but yeah, Mosley and Williams, they just seem to be like the guys. No one would have doubted them. Obviously, the injury to Mosley hastened sort of Sherwood's emergence, but how he's played since he came in has been a revelation. I know he's got a lot of missed tackles, and that's probably hurt some of those points scoring games that you talked about there, but he's still top 10 tackles in I have it here, is it 4 games in a row?
In
the last 4 games, 10 combined tackles plus. Yeah, as I say, a lot of those 13, have been assists.
9 and then 11. Yeah, so it's and that's what I mean. It's not going to be a boom, but it's still. He's LB 20 at the moment, and that's with having sharing time. He played sparingly in game 1, and then had sharing time in a couple of games where Mosley sort of come back. But I think it's just the age cliff for CJ now. It's just the body starting to fall apart, and he's just been doing it for so long. Like you said, him and Quincy were both 100% snap guys last season, and that would have been the anticipation moving forward. So. It's now that role opens up. Who's going to be the next 100% snap guy? And I just think it's going to be Jamien Sherwood, and he's got a great schedule coming up as well. So obviously this is the week 9 preview, so we're talking about Houston itself, but then he's got Arizona and Indy. So I just think if this neck injury is going to continue, I think Sherwood's going to be a guy that you just slot in as an LB2, LB3 guy every single week, and you're like, cool. What part of my lineup do I need to worry about? Because I've got this little part locked down.
Yeah. And I was going to offer that the Texans are typically not a good opposition team for linebackers in terms of tackle production, at least. But I think when you've got so many players out for the Texans recently, in terms of their wideouts, maybe that changes things. And I kind of shy away from that a little bit where guys like Sherwood are concerned because... like I say, the game plan, the game script could be so much different than that which the Texans have faced in other games because they've got so many guys out. So, I'm right there with you with Sherwood. I really want him to be the guy. The Jets have got a real difficult decision to face at the end of the season, haven't they? Because I don't think the way the contracts are set up, and I've started to move away from that a little bit in terms of. They've got a huge amount of dead money. They can't get rid of that guy because they often find a way, don't they? But with Mosley, they've got a real difficult decision to make, I think, there.
I think health-wise is probably going to start dictating that decision for them. Especially if Sherwood, if Mosley misses, extended time and Sherwood continues to play, well or adequately, they're going to be like, well, why are we paying CJ all this money to sit on our bench injured when we can just move forward? Because the thing is, they've got so many big money decisions to make, not just CJ Mosley. They've already sacked their head coach, so it's they're going to be looking for a new head coach. Is that guy going to be wanting to take on a whole bunch of aging vet, bloated contracts? No, not in the slightest. He's going to want to trim the fat, start again. I mean, he's going to have to fight with Woody Johnson because I don't really see a new coach being able to come in and say, right, cut Rodgers, cut Mosley, cut Adams. But it's something that
the thing is, Sherwood's out of contract after this season, so again they've got some really difficult decisions to make there because he deserves to be paid on the basis of what we've seen, but is what we've seen enough of a body of work to pay him what another team would pay him? That's the difficult thing, I think, for me.
I think they might get lucky enough with it where the linebacker market, there's so many mid-level guys that you see go for 3 year per 4 year per sort of thing that they can throw a couple of million at him if they want to keep him. I don't really see him getting anywhere up to like the 8 million sort of numbers that we saw for a few guys this season. But I could easily see like a 2-year, 7 million deal being the sort of thing. They're like, right, well, and if you continue to play well, we'll bump it.
Could be right. Could be right. Let's move on. We've discussed Sherwood. I like that nomination, by the way.
Thanks, man.
For me, you're welcome. For me, Jack Campbell this week is in a good spot. So he's been playing well lately, I think, Aaron. So for those who do believe in PFF grades, I know you do. 5th straight game with a rating above 70 overall. For those who aren't fans of PFF, I think just kind of like watch the game, watch the tape. He looks like he belongs, and that's something we couldn't always say as much as we wanted to last year. He finished last week with 11 combined tackles. I think he can do something similar this week. The Packers are a kind of a middling matchup for linebackers, and I do, I acknowledge that it took an injury to Malcolm Rodriguez to get Campbell this involved, but Rodriguez is doubtful again this week, and I don't have to worry about things beyond week 9 because, as we said, this is only a week 9 preview show. So Rodriguez out again this week. I think Campbell's my guy. Week 9, I think he can get 90% plus of the snaps again. I think he can be productive. I'd love him to become the guy we all thought he would be. Whether he will or not, I don't know. But for week 9, I'm there.
Dude, it's insanity that we're having to have a conversation about saying that a 6th round pick in Malcolm Rodriguez getting injured is the reason that the Lions' 1st round pick in Jack Campbell from this draft that followed. So Rodriguez was 2022, Campbell 2023, I believe. So it's like they had Rodriguez and they're like, we could probably upgrade this position, go out, take a guy in the 1st round. And then they're just like, we need to wait for that first guy to get injured before we're going to completely play. That just blows my mind.
You're so right.
I have way too much Jack Campbell in leagues for it to be acceptable because I bought all in. Predominantly all my leagues are dynasty leagues, and I bought all the way in when he was drafted. I was just like lunch pail, like all of the old adages and the cliches and the tropes that we say. I was right there. Like I was so close to getting a crew cut and an Iowa Hawkeyes jersey, man. Like I was dreaming of what was going to be. And then, our long-haired Prince Fabio decided to just stop being ass and has been a baller. And that is the only thing that stops me from 100%. Like it's the meme of like, just when I'm out, they pull me back in. Like I'm refusing to get all the way back in because of Anzalone is essentially it. Like I am happy enough to I've got Campbell stashed on a whole bunch of taxi squads and stuff, and I might just be like, let's just do a little maneuvering and put him in the lineup maybe because there's other guys that have been producing that I can't trust anymore, like guys like Justin Strenad and stuff who's dropped to like a 50% snap share, and I'm like, oh, that scares me way too much. So yeah, I think I'll be starting him this week, but if he just gets like 7 tackles and like 4 of them are assists and there's no sack or there's no pass defend or something, and he comes away with like 6.5 points, I'll be like, I knew it. and then I'll look and I'll see Anzalone's box score, and Anzalone will have like a 16-point game because that's what he does.
Yeah, and he's only 30. I mean, he's one of those guys that, to my mind, I look him up sometimes and it's like he's a lot younger. He's not as old. Rather, he's not as old as I thought he was. If we're playing this waiting game and waiting for him to disappear, it might not happen as early as we wanted to. But Campbell. What did you expect when you drafted him?
Honestly, like, and Evan pointed this out in the Slack, in the IDP Show Slack, that like when was the last time we got like a good 1st round linebacker? And we were taking it all the way back to like Roquan in like 2018 sort of thing. And to be honest with you, that was kind of like I was like instant top 10 linebackers sort of thing because I was like, this is Dan Campbell's guy. Like, you want to talk about lunch pail, like, just like what's the it's the picture of the wine aisle, and it just says like exciting whites above it. Like, you want to talk about that is Dan Campbell and Jack Campbell. Like, that it is father and son. Like, they have the same name. And that's like the worst analysis, like surname analysis. Oh my god!
No, that's going to be the banner for this entire episode. They have the same surname. What are we doing?
It should have been. It should have been. Stop neglecting your son, Dan. This is child abuse.
I don't think you're alone. I don't think you're alone. Like, a lot of people expected big things, and a lot of people that I think drafted him have probably held on to him because he hasn't exactly disappointed. It's been an opportunity situation. But if quality of play matters, and it has to matter after a point in time, we know it does, then surely what I said there about him playing really well in the last 5 games counts for something, because that wasn't, as I say, the case last year. Maybe Dan Campbell takes notice. Maybe his father takes notice and decides that now is Jack's time.
Yeah, I think in the waiver wire article, Mike was very quick to point out, like, Jack just being an absolute man in run defense and just shedding his. So I think it was a pulling guard that came off, and he just got rid of him and just stood up the running back in the hole. And he was like, "That is a hell of a rep." And I was just like, "It's all coming together."
I think we were a bit spoiled with the Keekleys, the Willis, that generation, Bowman. It was crazy, and now we're seeing the sort of a drop off, and it's just normal, and we just got to get used to it. We've still got very good linebackers in this league. They just happen to be 25
on the 49ers.
plus.
On the 49ers.
Yeah, as has been the case for the last 10 years. It is what it is. Let's move on. So, Aaron, which linebackers do you not like for week 9, and why?
All of them, apart from Jack Campbell and Jamien Sherwood. No. Tyrel Dodson. It's a bit of a. I've taken a bit of a free square this time around. It's Tyrel Dodson, and predominantly it's Ernest Jones. Like, it's just before Tyrel Dodson. Like, Tyrel Dodson is still the LB 11 on the season right now, as from Big 3 scoring. But he's only averaging 12.8 points per game. Now, this is something that we need to also be careful of like total season scoring versus points per game scoring, because 12.8 points per game, like, if you look at him on a weekly average, he's not the LB 11. But we've had a lot of guys miss a game here or there. We've had bye weeks. We've had teams that haven't had all the games yet. So yeah. He's it's a bit of a fake sort of stat saying, well, he's the LB 11, because in points per game he's down at like LB 23 or something like that. But he also had a massive first 6 weeks, so he was top 7 in the first 6 weeks, and then in the past 2 weeks he's averaged 6.5 points per game. So he's just bottomed out, and one of those games Ernest played, one of those games he just wasn't as good. But the main thing is his main competition for snaps, for plays, was Jerome Baker previously. Ernest on the field is like a shark vacuum cleaner, man. He just sucks up all the production. He gets all the tackles. He's just everywhere. And they were talking about this on the main show last night, that like the capital that Seattle gave up, it's like, yeah, Tyrel Dodson, but a fourth. Like, you can get a lot for a fourth nowadays. I just saw Deontay Johnson traded for the Carolina Panthers to move up 6 spots in the draft. Like, that's what they gave up. I mean, obviously those positions could change if Baltimore drops down the rankings and so on and so forth. But it's like a fourth can get you a lot in the NFL terms, and they used it to get Ernest like on top of a player. So he is going to be a feature piece. Mike McDonald loves to have that field general in the middle controlling play. Like, he did it with Roquan when he was in Baltimore. He did it at Michigan. That's his thing. He absolutely loves that. Ernest is going to be that man in the middle, and then it's going to like, they're still going to be running Dodson on 85-90% of plays at least. But I just don't know if he's going to be in a position to make, like, I look at it how it was when he was in Buffalo, like when there was Bernard and at different points due to injury and such, like Milano. Like Dodson was never the guy. He was always Robin. And I think that's the way it's going to continue. So for week 9, I don't see him performing up to his LB11 billing that he's got at the moment.
Okay. Let me play devil's advocate for a minute.
Ooh,
Mike McDonald, we saw his, not the, but his LB2 perform pretty well in his scheme in the past, right? So is there not room for a Tyrel Dodson, as you said, will still be playing 90% plus every week to still put up good numbers?
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. And that's a very good point to make. We saw Patrick Queen beside Roquan put up those amazing numbers. I was about to say I don't think Tyrel Dodson is Patrick Queen, but at the moment I don't think Patrick Queen is Patrick Queen, so that's a little bit of an empty argument. It's like if we look at him in Pittsburgh, it's not the same. It is not the same dude. I definitely think it's there, but I think where the first 6 weeks Dodson was playing Batman and Baker was playing Robin, and if you look at the production that Baker was putting up, that is closer to what I think you can expect from Dodson moving forward, which was, between sort of 8 and 12 points per game as opposed to, the 16 to 20.
Yep.
And I mean, again, double-digit points, nothing to sniff at. If you're, especially when you're in those deeper leagues and you've got to start like 4 linebackers and a couple of IDP flexes as well, like you're clamoring for double-digit points to be able to slot into one of those flex spots. But it's just where, if you're looking at, like, if you were to go into your lineup and you go to select Tyrel Dodson and put him in there and it's got the green LB11 sitting beside his name and you're like, oh man, I've got the LB11. Like it's not what I would be expecting. Like I'm not looking at Tyrel Dodson and going to go, he's going to finish top 12 in scoring, because he is a top 12 linebacker. Like that's where I'm sort of pouring the cold water on. Like he's sat as a top 12 guy in total scoring so far. I do not think in week 9 he's going to finish as a top 12 guy.
I got you. No, and on that point, I definitely agree with you. We often harp on about how health is everything. Unless you're out there, you can't score fantasy points. But also, the amount of points you score on a per snap, on a per game basis are equally as important because. Yeah, just because he happens to have been healthy doesn't necessarily mean he's going to score at the same rate where he currently sits in terms of the overall position. So yeah, I get that point, and I do agree with you. To be honest, this is kind of like one where I'm kind of waiting to see what happens. If I've got another guy, trying to think of a comparable player who has scored a similar amount of points per game, who has also been healthy. Maybe I would sit Dodson because there is that element of doubt.
What about like a new hotness sort of thing? What about like where would you sit on like Dodson versus like Christian Ellis, who's just moved into, we presume he's the new starting middle linebacker there, taking over from Jelani Devine in New England. Where would you sit on like Dodson versus Ellis?
Ellis scares me a little bit as well because there's an element of danger there too, in the sense that he's just come in, still hasn't been like an 100% guy. Tacky, possibly coming back at some point. Kind of like throw him into the mix as well. Like, what do we end up with? That scares me too. Both situations scare me a little bit. I'd probably still sit with Dodson because I know for a fact that Dodson's. Not for a fact, but I'm very confident in the fact that Dodson will play 90% plus of the snaps this week.
I got two more names for you, and I'm going to try scare you with both of them because it is spooky season. So let's see if we can give you a bit of a fright. Nate Landman in Atlanta.
Again, depends on what's going on with Anderson because I can't see Landman being their guy on obvious passing downs. It's just not him.
And that's why I'm sort of curious about that, because obviously Landman was the guy for the first, and then he got injured, and then Anderson got the job and blew up, and then Anderson got injured, and then it's like, what do they do when they're both healthy? Because I have no idea.
I think they go back to what they were doing when they were both healthy, which we only really saw in, was it week 1?
Week 1.
Where both guys kind of like split duties, and then it was Caden Ellis, and then the other
neither
two.
of them was good. Neither of them were
No.
good. Yeah.
And for that reason, I'd still go with Dodson. 90% plus 45, 50% of the snaps. That's a no-brainer.
All right, last name for you, Neville Hewitt in Houston. Al-Shaair is presumed to still be on the shelf. Christian Harris hasn't been removed off of IR yet. To'o might be coming back, but I mean, if he does, I think that just means Devin White finally just gets again where he should. Neville Hewitt in Houston. He's put up I think he had like a 20 point performance in his first week, and then he put up 14.5 in his most recent outing.
That one's a little closer for me, I think. And again, it really depends on what happens to the others, but the way they're trending, I'd probably go with Hewitt there, I think.
All right.
Very close between Hewitt and Dodson for me, though. And
just
bear in mind,
lineup.
I picked up a bunch of Hewitt in multiple places over the last 2 weeks because I found myself really desperate at linebacker. I've been hit by that injury situation, like I'm sure many have. So
I made the mistake. I made the mistake of the last couple of years, in one of my main dynasty leagues. Just every time I had a good linebacker, selling them off because I was like, I can get value for this. So if I sell it off, and I can find replacement production on the waiver wire. So it's So I sold Aziz Al-Shaair, I sold Foye, I sold Logan Wilson. I was just like, give me all these picks. And now I'm starting Stranad and I picked up Christian Ellis this week, and then I'm going to go grab Neville Hewitt, and I'm just trying to bit part my linebackers together. God, I wish I had some consistency.
You're in good company. I did similar things with Divine Diablo, and I thought he was going to lose his role at some point because he just can't stop missing tackles, and then ever since I got rid of him, he's stopped missing tackles. So that's
because they've got Tommy Eichenberg to miss the tackles now. So
that's it.
You throw Eichenberg at them first, they dodge him, and they dodge into Diablo. So
that's it. That's the way it goes. We're cursed. We're cursed. So let's move on to my linebacker fade and my guy this week. I don't hate him. And I am very keen to say that. And I've actually prepared a little note on that point to say that I don't hate him. But this one's simple, right? So it's Devin Lloyd. This was clear because the linebacker situation in Jacksonville just annoys the hell out of me, right, Aaron? So as we alluded to earlier on, we assumed it would be. Why would we assume anything other than the fact it would be Oluokun? He's been the LB1 in IDP for 3 seasons in a row, which is almost unheard of.
I know.
We knew Devin Lloyd was there. We know they keep drafting linebackers. We know Muma kind of ate into Lloyd's snap share a little bit for a time there. We know they got Ventrell Miller, I think, overpaid for him. Still assumed it would be Oluokun and Lloyd all the way this year. And I don't think Lloyd has played that badly at all. I think, in fact, he's played pretty well at times. But this linebacker rotation has taken us all by surprise. And that kind of changed for a little while there when Oluokun got injured. But he came back last week, and that rotation has returned. Not in Oluokun's case, because he had 93% of the snaps, but Ventrell Miller had something like 59, and then Lloyd had 57. It's horrible. Why would I want any part of that? Like I say, this does annoy the hell out of me because Lloyd's actually playing pretty well. I think he's head and shoulders above Miller. I know Miller's been more productive lately over the course of 2-3 games. If you buy into that, then good luck to you. I think Lloyd deserves to be playing a lot more than he does. But what I think doesn't matter. We've got very used to making these arguments against computer screens when we know nothing about the game compared to these defensive coordinators, right? So, Oluokun's the only guy I trust there on a weekly basis, unless we're in a really heavy bye week, at which point, if we were starting 4 linebackers, I might look towards sort of Lloyd or maybe even Miller's way. But for now, you can't trust him.
I mean, have you seen the Jags defense on the football field? I kind of feel like you arguing into a computer screen might be slightly more effective at this point. You might put up a little bit more of a challenge. It's just, I don't know what their DC is doing, but he's not stopping offenses. This drives me insane, man. Devin Lloyd was my like Jack Campbell before Jack Campbell. He was the first round linebacker that I took in the early second and rookie drafts, like thinking this is going to be the dude. Like Foyer is old, he's getting forced out, he doesn't have a contract, and then they draft Devin Lloyd, and then they extend Foyer for like 70 odd million, and I was like, and it all just went to dust from then, and it's like, oh man, I can't, and I still can't quit him. I've got him on like every team, and he's just staring at me from my bench. And like when Foyer got injured, and they put him on IR, and I was like, "Oh, I can slot you in now." And he gave me like 2 good performances out of the 4 weeks that Foyer was on IR, and I was like, and then Foyer came back last week, and I was like, right, back to the bench with you, Devin Lloyd. You might even be a cut candidate at this point, because it's you cannot trust it. Like I don't understand what this rotation is, and when they were all healthy, the rotation was affecting Foyer. Like there was games where Foyer dropped down to like 80% snap share. And then it was like Muma was at like 45% and Lloyd was at like 54%. And then Ventrell Miller was at like like a 60% or 50% snap share. And then there was another dude getting snaps at like 10%. And I was like, what are we doing? Like, just play your best players. Like,
but as I said, we're arguing at the screen. We just have to we have to call it as we see it. And as frustrating as it is, we just can't trust guys like Lloyd right now. And as I say, I think he's playing pretty well. I know he's not amazing in coverage, but there's that applies to, I think, all but about 10, maybe 15 linebackers in the NFL right now. And maybe that's a bit generous. Is
so hard. So hard.
Yeah.
I've played
he's not
football.
Horrible.
Yeah. I've played amateur football, and that's like covering dudes like of my own athleticism, and like, you know, dudes that are working a 9 to 5 and then are going out and playing football on the weekends. And it's still really hard to cover people as a linebacker. Like now you're asking, yes, I get that, it's someone playing the linebacker as an NFL athlete, but the guys that they're expected to cover are like the best of athletes. You know, they're asked to cover like running backs and tight ends. Like these dudes, like the tight ends are like the athletic freaks. There's a guy that hit you like a lineman, but will outrun your safeties. And then these running backs, they're guys that are they're human bowling balls. Like, and then we see someone get outrun because the guy runs a 4.40, and you're like, oh, he got burned. And it's like, what do you expect? Coverage is hard.
And when you say the guy, you mean like the quarterback who can also launch it 70 yards.
Oh my God.
And he was also 250 pounds. It's crazy.
Coverage is really, really hard. So if you're really good at coverage as a linebacker, like you are elite.
But point stands. Like I say, I think he's playing better than. He's playing well, and he deserves to be playing more snaps than he is. But
this coach doesn't care.
This coach doesn't care, and therefore we have to kind of like just go with what we're seeing. And it pains us sometimes to admit that that's the case. We can, as I say, complain and shout at the screen as much as we want to. It's not going to change anything. We want to win fantasy championships this season based on what's going on. So yeah, we just can't start Lloyd right now.
No, and I mean, that's the thing. They've got a decision to make about him as well. Like, he's got his 5th-year option. I think they have to decide if they pick it up this year, I believe. So they've got a massive choice to make with him. And, they re-upped Foyer, and then they drafted Boomer the year after they drafted after they took Lloyd. So it's just like they keep taking swings. And I don't know if this regime is going to be there next year. So... Like Shad Khan just feels like one of those owners that just is, he's not David Tepper, but, he's not far off. And Trent Baalke just keeps taking swings and misses as a general manager. Like, Brian Thomas, well done. But I will die on the rock that I still think Trayvon was the wrong pick. Like, until the cows come home. Like, they talked about it on the main show last night. The guys did, and they're like, oh, it wasn't a bad pick. And I was like, the Hutch was right there. You could have had him.
And it will always come back to this. And this is like, those two will be inextricably linked in the way that the Myles Garrett and the TJ Watts that we talked about at the top of the show will be. And
But this is like Michael Jordan going second overall. This is like like Greg Oden going before Kevin Durant. Like, it was the wrong pick. Just admit it.
Yeah. It is. It is hard. It is hard. You are comparing probably, arguably, the best defensive edge, the best edge player in the NFL over the first 6 games of the season versus a guy who's going to be a perennial project in my mind. But
he was the best edge in college that season as well. Like, he almost sort of single-handedly willed Michigan to the natty because he was just destroying teams left, right, and center. Like, it shouldn't have been as hard as it was, man.
Yeah, but you know what the argument's going to be, though, Aaron? It's going to be who's had more sacks in 2024.
I hate you for that. I hate you for that.
I hope so. You gotta love it. You gotta love it. Let's talk some defensive linemen.
Yes.
Who do you love in week 9?
See, this is where, like, we've talked about TJ Watt, we've talked about Myles Garrett. It's time for me to wax poetically about another edge rusher in my division that's not on my team. It's Trey Hendrickson. I love Trey Hendrickson. The dude is he's just a pass rusher. That's all he is. Like, I'm
glad you said it.
he is just a like, get after the quarterback. Like, do not ask him to play the run. Do not ask him to spy or anything like that. Like, just tell him to pin his ears back 30 times a game and get after the quarterback, and he will do it for you. He's so feast or famine. But he always has been. Like, even when he was in, like, New Orleans playing sparingly, and then Cincinnati was like, yeah, we'll give you money to come and do a very specific job for us. And he does that job so well. I said he's feast or famine. Like, when it's feast time, he absolutely feasts, though. So he's got 7 sacks on 37 pressures so far through 8 games. Out of those 8 games, he's had 5 games of those 8 where he's had 4 or more pressures. In those games where he's had 4 or more pressures, he's got multiple sacks in 3 of those 4. So if he gets 4 pressures in a game, there's a 75% chance he's going to get 2 sacks in that game. Like, small sample size, yes, but now he faces Vegas, and Vegas's tackles Colton Miller, and they're going to kill me because I can't remember the other dude's name. But they've given up 26 pressures and 6 sacks through 8 games because they have Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell standing behind them. And sacks are 100% of quarterback stats. It doesn't matter how good your tackles are. If your QB does not have a feel for pressure, which neither of those dudes do, you're going to eventually, like, you can only block somebody for so long. And Trey Hendrickson is not somebody that you can block for very long.
I'm a big Trey Hendrickson fan. You described him perfectly there. Stole many of my points. You know, he is feast or famine in the sense that he will never get you a tackle. Like, he is like a Yannick Ngakoue, like a Montez Sweat this season, given a bit of a clue there as to the guy that I'm going to talk about in a minute. Who will not get you many tackles at all, but who cares when he's generating like 15 to 20 sacks every season for 3 seasons in a row. Now, the way I don't like him being described in a feast or famine sense, at least last year, maybe I've changed my mind a little bit this year. Last year, he only went like 2 or 3 games without a sack. In every other game all season, he had at least half a sack, which is the opposite of feast or famine. That's extremely consistent. But that's also rare, and we weren't expecting that this year, right? So he is a supreme pass rusher, is underrated. I forget about him when I'm talking about that tier of guys behind you mentioned top 7. For me, it's like maybe a top 6. I forget about that next tier of guys behind. I always forget about Hendrickson, and that's on me. I assume others do the same. Maybe they don't, and I'm just an idiot. But He is extremely good at what he does, and for a long time it was really nice to partner Hendrickson with his teammate Hubbard because they were the exact opposite. And this has become a bit of a cliche thing. I've mentioned this like quite a few times on quite a few shows now, where Hubbard would get you 1 sack every 4 games, but would get you 5 tackles a game. Hendrickson would get you, like a sack pretty much every game, but 1 tackle every 5 games. So yeah, it's fine. They were quite nice to pair together because they were complete opposites in that way. But yeah, he is supreme. I'm a big fan. I like this nomination. Can't argue against it.
He's a one-trick pony, but that pony is a racehorse. Like yes. He does that one trick so well.
Yeah, he does. For me, I've gone with Jonathan Greenard, and I'm a huge fan of what he's doing this year. He's that guy for me where we saw that real glimpse of who he could become a while back, and some people kind of bought into it, some didn't, and then there was a bit of a drop off, and now he's back, and he's back with a bang. And I know he started the season incredibly well, and I think the last 4 games he's maybe only got one sack, but this is where I think you can have an advantage over your league mates who don't necessarily watch games versus those that only look at the box score. Because if you watch Greenard in that last game, he was incredible. He was constantly in the quarterback's face. That spin move he put on, I forget the tackle he was going up against, was eye-opening. Was it
Havenstone?
It might have been. He's just playing at such an insanely high level. This week he's got the Colts. I was going to say the Colts really struggled to protect Richardson, but it was more Richardson failed to evade the pressure which came his way, in fairness to the Colts line. And obviously we know Richardson's not going to be starting this week, and that almost made me want to change this nomination. But Flacco is no Lamar Jackson, right? He is a bit of a statue. He hasn't been great at evading pressure in the past. I still think this is a good matchup. I've got a couple of Greenard stats for you here, Aaron, as well. 43 pressures at the moment, ranks 3rd amongst all edge rushers. 17.8% pressure rate, ranks 4th. And a fun fact, Greenard is only 5 pressures short of his career high last year, despite logging 163 fewer pass rush attempts. I'm a big fan of how he's playing this year. He's playing extremely well. I know that he hasn't been getting the sacks in the last few games as regularly as he was in the first few, but I think it's just a matter of time, and I think this week could well be it.
Mate, Flores has that defense humming something chronic. It is unreal. And it's slowed down the last couple of weeks. Very few defenses are going to be able to stop a fully fledged Rams offense. And I heard a stat today that Rams, the 2024 Rams, when Puka, Kupp, Kyron, and Stafford are all on the field together, they are one of the top 5 most efficient offenses of all time. But we've seen it it's 2 games. I think we've seen all 4 of them together, but they're up there on the efficiency, on par of efficiency level with the 07 Patriots, the 2018 Chiefs with Mahomes, and I think it's the 2014 Broncos with Peyton Manning. They're on that level of offensive efficiency, and I was like, whoa, when I heard that. So I don't blame Flores for not being able to properly slow down the Rams this past week, but I love Greenard, and I got onto him because of the guys on the main show. I remember it was either Bobby or Adam talking about him when he was in Houston 2 years ago, because he had a great year last year. I think he finished with 12.5 sacks or 13 sacks last year. But I think the year before, I think he had about 6 or 7. And they were talking about him then. They were like, this guy's going to be something. This guy is going to be a dude. And I was like, okay, I feel that. And then the way that they're generating pressure from the Minnesota perspective, it makes me so frustrated. I'm going to tangent a little bit. It makes me so frustrated they're not using Dallas Turner at all, because AVG is a stud right now. He's like a top 3 IDP player, because he is just an absolute animal of an IDP player. Greenard is, like you say, he's just there consistently, generating pressure, getting in the way, but they're also bringing really creative blitzes. So you've got Cashman and Pace. Like Pace has had a sack on like each of the past 2 games because they're bringing him on really creative stunts and blitzes as well. And you cannot account for it because you've just got AVG coming off the edge like a rabid dog, like hair flying, mouth foaming, and Greenard is just so clean in his pass rush moves that he is there, and you've got sub 3 seconds to throw the ball before somebody hits you. So yeah, I really like this one. I do not enjoy the disrespect to Jomar Flaxen. Like it's just and I use that nickname purely because of like I think it was like a 25 yard run when he was in for Richardson about 3 or 4 games ago when he took off, and I was like, yo, Joe, I did not know you had that in you. Like it was a hell of a scramble. He ran for like 24 yards or something. I was like, yo. And I saw on Twitter someone had nicknamed him Jomar Flaxen, and
That's
I was like,
that's gonna stick. It's gonna stick.
So I don't so I don't like the disrespect that you put to him by saying he's no Lamar, but no, he is an absolute statue predominantly, but he has got good pocket presence. So I wonder if it is going to be, he feels pressure so much better than A-Rich does. So I think it does sort of take a little bit of the sheen off, but I still think Greenard is a stud anyway, and he could, because he's not Trey Hendrickson. He's not just a pure pass rusher. Like he does get passes defended. He gets his hands up and he gets in passing lanes. He plays the run really well. So even if like he doesn't get to Flacco, he could easily still stuff the run at least once, get a pass defended, get a couple of QB hits, and you're staring down a 13-point performance with no sacks.
Mm-hmm. I just think he's taken his game to a new level on a more consistent basis. Like you said there, the guys, and a lot of us were talking about how good he was 3-4 years ago when he put up those sort of 7-8 sacks, and he really didn't generate a lot of pressures. Liken him to like a Yaya Diaby that season, for example, where we were worried that maybe his sack rate wasn't sustainable. But those guys can go one of 2 ways. They can either start to generate a bunch more pressures and actually maintain that sack rate, or they struggle to maintain that sort of pressure rate and the sack rate goes down. In his case, it's been a little bit of both in the intervening years, and this year it's nice to see him build on a really good 2023 and take his pressure rate to a new level. His sack rate's going up. I mean, health with or injuries notwithstanding, I think he can have his best year yet, and that's not a far cry whatsoever. I think he's a really good player, and it's great to see it happen. He's playing in, I think, exactly the right scheme for him on a team that can bring pressure from multiple situations, from multiple players, as you say, which also benefits him. Yeah, big fan.
Perfect replacement for Flores after, and it was kind of weird seeing them swap teams, but with Hunter leaving Minnesota and going to Houston, and then Greenard being like, well, there's a vacancy there. Let me just go fill that nice and smoothly. And it's worked out well for both teams. It
has.
You take my job, I take yours.
Yeah, that's it. So which defensive lineman do you not like this week?
Man, I'm all about buzz killing tonight. It's like, if you've been doing well, I'm going to turn around and say, well, you're not going to continue to do well, because that's how regression works. And it's Nik Bonitto. And it's purely because he has been doing really, really well. And so he's averaging 15 points per game over the past 3 weeks and 14.5 over the past 5 weeks, because he's had a sack in 6 straight games. Mm-hmm. So I think he is the most consistent. I had to look through. I can't find anybody else who's been as consistent in the league as Nik Bonitto, giving you a sack every single week for the past 6 weeks. And it's almost like we've only sort of started to pay attention to it in the last 2, because you're like, oh, he's had a sack in 3 straight games. I might just slot him in. And then it's like you slot him in. You're like, oh, you got me a sack. Cool. There's 13.5 points. Thank you very much. He's only had 4 tackles, as a maximum, once in those past 6 weeks. He is Trey Hendrickson light. Like he's not going to get you 2 sacks in the game, but he will 100% get you 1. But he will not tackle anybody. Like he just doesn't. He gets like 2 tackles here, 3 tackles there, and that is total tackles. That's not solos. So he may finish with a 3 tackle game, and 2 of them are assists. And this week, he plays somebody that you've already mentioned. He plays Lamar Jackson. And we sort of joked that Joe Flacco isn't Lamar Jackson, and the sack rate and everything. Like Lamar has tied for the least amount of sacks this season of all QBs. He's been sacked 12 times across 8 games. So without a sack, Bonitto's floor is the basement. Like it is negligible. Like you're staring at 3 points, and I don't know if he can get that sack this week. Like do I think Denver will get to Lamar? Absolutely. But they've got so many guys playing so well across that defensive line that I do not think every single one of them, like they've got Zach Allen, they've got Jonathan Cooper, Baron Browning is back in the mix. Like Jonah Ellis still gets sent on, pass rush attempts and everything. Bonitto's still there. Like there's so much going on in that edge room, and with Zach Allen as well, who I think is just phenomenal. I just don't think there's going to be enough to go around, and I think that it's going to be Bonitto who's going to be the run to the litter that doesn't get the food because everybody else takes what's there before he arrives.
Yep, I don't disagree. I kind of like Bonitto. I think I like what he's doing. I still think he's a developing young player who can reach really impressive heights at some point. But this isn't the game for him. I was looking at his pressure rate. I do have it here. In fact, I have everyone's pressure rate here. Nik Bonitto ranks.
All right, Macri.
This is really good.
Riveting podcast audio as Jason searches.
32 out of 85 edge rushers, in terms of pressure rate, which isn't terrible whatsoever. But as I look, I've still got the Jonathan Greenard stats up compared to Bonitto's. And yes, Bonitto's got a sack in the last 6 games. But you look at the amount of pressures he's generated in those games: 2, 5, 3, 2, 3, 4. And as I tab back to Greenard, his pressure rates, and bear in mind he doesn't have a sack in 3 of the last 4 games: 5, 9, 7, 5, 5, 7. Again, this isn't very scientific. I'd love to have the pressure rates of both up. In fact, I could get them up here, but as I've already demonstrated, that doesn't make for great podcasting. So I'm just going to leave you this. I don't think Bonitto is a good shout this week. Absolutely not. I will never argue with any of my guests who suggests that an edge rusher who's facing the Ravens is a bad call. This makes too much sense.
Yeah, and I think the main thing is you've mentioned about the pressure rate and not being convertible with the sacks and stuff. It's because they have so many good guys that there are cleanup sacks to be had by all of them, because someone else will generate the pressure, it'll flush the QB, and then you get yourself a lovely cleanup sack. When you're playing on a defensive line with so many talented players, it allows for you to have a really high conversion rate of a low pressure rate. But when you play against really talented QBs, it doesn't always work out for that. And I'm biased. I know that. I'm a Baltimore fan, but Lamar is a really talented QB. Like he just is. Like I watched him make Sam Hubbard reevaluate his life choices after he stiff-armed him in the face and then threw a dime to Isaiah Likely that had I thought I'd only ever seen the surrender cobra from Will Levis. Sam Hubbard did the surrender cobra. He knelt down on the side of the field. He put his hands on his hips and he questioned, "What am I doing with my life? Like, why am I chasing this guy around the field?" Like,
I wish I remembered that you were a Ravens fan before you made this nomination, because you've just destroyed your entire argument. Your homerism is coming out now. It's disgusting. We should move on.
Get to my boy. Get to my boy.
I will be desperate for Bonitto to get a sack on.
He's gonna come away with 3, and it's just gonna be my stupid mug plastered over Twitter, being like, "This guy faded him."
I'm gonna do that. I am definitely gonna do that. With a massive Bonitto gets a sack font over your face. Mate. Right, my guy is also doing really well this year. Really good form. I like him as a player. Did really well last year after the trade. Montez Sweat, 4 sacks in his last 5 games, Aaron. But the Bears play the Cardinals this week. This is purely a matchup-based nomination. Kyle Murray, for me, he's no Lamar Jackson, but he's done a great job of evading pressure lately. Hasn't been sacked at all in the last 3 games. And his right tackle, Kelvin Beachum, who Sweat will go up against most of this game. We talked earlier on about the fact we can't just assume that they're only going to face one blocker for the entirety of the game. They're going to get chipped. There's going to be other guys. They're going to come inside, sometimes get blocked by the guard, etc., etc. But most of the time, Sweat's going to go up against Kelvin Beachum. Beachum has been playing pretty well. And while for fantasy purposes, as we talked about earlier on, sacks are king for these edge guys, Sweat, his tackle production has been awful this year by his standards, and awful by anyone's standards, like averaging just over 1 tackle per game, which means his value is nothing unless he gets a sack. Same argument you put forth with Bonitto. So I think he struggles this week in week 9, given the matchup. It helps me and my cause that he didn't practice this week with a shin injury. Wouldn't risk injury on anybody, but yeah, the likelihood that he either plays and isn't quite at 100%, or or doesn't play at all, in which case this is a slam dunk selection by me, and I'm a genius. So yes, there we are. It's Montez Sweat. What say you, Aaron?
Taking the layup, just crawling injury reports. Who's injured? Who can I talk about? Who's a fade? Who didn't practice on Wednesday? Where's my fades at? No. So counterpoint. Call of Duty dropped on Friday. So Kyler hasn't had any sleep for the past 4 days. So I don't know how well. No.
This is the analysis we need. Thinking outside the box.
100%.
Love it.
100%. No, because the Call of Duty dropped on Friday and he still went out and balled on Sunday. So I can't get it out of my head ever since I heard someone say that Kyler scrambles like a toddler running away from the mum with the iPad. Like that's so what he runs like, and yeah, that's just I can never get rid of that ever now. But I also just the cojones on the man for him to like twice this season he's called house calls at like the 50-yard line as he's going past the defender. He's just like, "Yep, you're not touching me," and he's like 50 yards out, and I'm just like, "Yo, that is baller."
Yeah. One interesting stat I did find on Kyler earlier on is that he's only been sacked more than once in 2 games this season. In all other games, it's either been 0 or only 1 sack per game, which I think is pretty impressive. He's played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, they haven't had a bye yet, so 8 games, and he's only ever been sacked in those 8 games more than once in 2 of those games. I think that's pretty crazy.
That's sick. But the thing I would say to that is, who else is going to sack him on Chicago? Like, if not Montez, then who? Like, is it going to be Booker? Is it going to be Austin Taylor? TJ Edwards, he's a great blitzing linebacker and stuff. No, I think you're just, I take this very, very personally. I think you're literally putting the hex on Montez just to jinx my my IDP Madness squad, because him and Sexy Dexy have been carrying me through. So I'm 6-2 thanks to them, and you're just deciding to ruin that for me. So we can't be friends anymore.
Fine, let's end this show now.
Yeah, podcast is over. I'm storming off.
We're not covering defensive backs. That's it. We're done. But yeah, I as I say, I like the guy. I said this from the outset. I do like the guy. I think he's a lot better than the player I thought he was for a long time in Washington. I didn't expect him to have the success that he has had since he left there. I thought he was a good player. And obviously, when he first came out, we knew that he was this like athletic freak. And would he ever, like get the details, the minutiae of the game down to the point where he was really good at the technical stuff as well as just being this athletic phenomenon? I think we're starting to see him achieve that and have done for most of the last season and a half now. So I like the player. I think he's going to have a good season. I just don't think this is going to be his game.
Yeah, I liked him. I liked him in Washington averagely when he came out in 2019, and then when they drafted Young, I was like, oh no, Chase Young's way better. Like, and I was yeah. And then he just sort of consistently outperformed Chase Young over and over and over again, and I was like, oh, okay, right, that he is the better guy. And then when Chicago made the trade for him last year, halfway through the season, like it looked so smart, like getting him because he ended up, I think he finished the season as both Washington and Chicago's top sack getter. First, like, because he had like six for Washington and then like 6 for Chicago, and
which
both
sounds way more impressive than it is until you think about both teams and their ability to rush.
It's just both teams were so deficient of pass rush talent on both squads that he was just like the best for both of them. So, and it was such a clever trade. But then you look at like I think they sent a second for him, but then you realize they also sent a second for Chase Claypool, and you're like, how do you get Montez for a second, and then also you give up a second for Chase, like Ryan Poles? What? But I rate Montez. I think he's like you say, he's been really good. The shin injury worries me a little bit because if he's hampered, I'm not sure how effective he's going to be. Running around with a banged up shin trying to chase a toddler with an iPad.
Mm-hmm.
You'll never get that out of your head, man. You will never, ever, ever get that out of your head. It's insane.
It's been much easier to admit it after I traded a bunch of Kyler in a bunch of fantasy leagues. Now
I've got so much Kyler, man. And every time I watch him take off, I have like the there's 2 different sound effects. It's either one of them's like the Tom
Benny
and Jerry,
Hill?
like with the little feet, like it's either that one or the Fred Flintstone, like where their feet are just underneath the car, and like they're the 2 sound effects. Because his legs move so fast.
Oh, rapid. He'd easily. No, I'm not even going to say it. Right, let's go on with defensive backs. Defensive backs. Who do you like?
Talk about his teammate. We'll talk about Kyler's teammate, Budda Baker. I like Budda. I don't just like Budda. I love Budda. Like this season is like, and I wrote about this in the recap on Monday. It's like a renaissance of Budda this season. Like he is playing like the guy that we knew he was back in the early 2020s when he was like dynasty DB3, because it was like Derwin, it was him. And this was back when Jamal Adams was still good. Like these were the guys that you wanted. And in the past 5 weeks, he leads all defensive backs in tackles, but not just tackles, solos and assists. He leads both categories individually. But he's got nothing else. He's got 54 tackles in the past 5 games, and he's got no impact plays. Like he hasn't defended a pass. I gave the stat to the guys and they used it on the main show. He is the only DB in the top 30 for scoring that does not have a sack, an interception, a forced fumble, or a fumble recovery. Like he does is tackle people, and he tackles so much.
And this is who he's been most of his career. Apart from like the odd season or 2, he's never been that big play scorer. He's just been for stretches that massive tackle producer, and that's been enough in the vast majority of fantasy leagues where which lean towards sort of high tackle scoring. And it's really nice to see him sort of bounce back and become that guy again, because we knew he had the talent, we knew he had the the ability to get to that point again. So it's just been a waiting game, I guess, and it's been frustrating not seeing that in recent times. But yeah, here we are. It feels like home, doesn't it? Right.
I did wonder last year if he had lost the motivation, like with how poorly Arizona was playing. They earned the number 6 overall pick. That's where they took Paris Johnson left tackle. I did wonder halfway through last season if he had just sort of given up, because even before he got injured, I think he played 12 games last year and then missed. He missed 5, and I was like, he just doesn't look the same. He's not like, because that defense was something. It's still not great this year. Like it's still a bad defense this year, but last year was like Jacksonville bad, and like. I kind of wondered. I was like, does he want a new contract? Does he just he just wants out of this situation? Because because this was still the Kingsbury and the Steve Keim sort of regime. It's like they've wasted all these first-round picks on Isaiah Simmons and Zayvon Collins and these guys that are supposed to be providing support for Budda in the defense, and the defense is still just straight cheeks. And that linebacking core is still a mess. Like, Kaiser White is passable. Zayvon Collins is playing as an edge and then still getting snaps at off-ball linebacker as well. Mac Wilson's playing like 75% of snaps, but, he's one of those guys that was overhyped coming out of Alabama and then was at New England for a little bit. We were like, this is one of Bill Belichick's guys. And then he's popped and had a game or two here, but it's like Budda is the defense, and they don't have a pass rush to save their lives. Jalen Thompson is good on the back end, but it's not like they have like a lockdown corner either. So it's Budda and ETL, like it's Budda and crew, like. So yeah, I'm all about Budda this week, and I'm all about Budda this season, man.
I think most people only care about Budda. Maybe Kaiser. Maybe a little bit of Gardek in those best ball leagues. If anyone out there is relying on Zayvon Collins
pre-ACL,
yeah, for fantasy success, Zayvon Collins, then you're kind of setting yourself up for a fail. So I don't care. Nick Vallis is my hero because he's brought Budda back to the player he was before. So that's all I care about.
Yeah, I love it.
It's great to see. So my guy is someone I didn't think I'd ever be talking about on this show, actually, but it's Coby Bryant. Really straightforward one again, Aaron. Really productive since stepping in for Rayshon Jenkins. Jenkins landed on IR, 2-3 weeks ago now. In the 2 games since, Bryant's played pretty much every down. 16 combined tackles in the last 2 games, an interception and a pass breakup. That's great to see. I really like his matchup as well. This week he's got a favorable matchup against the Rams. They've allowed top 5 tackle production to opposition safeties. So yeah, there's a lot to like about his situation. He's playing a lot. He's got a nice matchup. He's been productive in recent games. Why would I not like this?
And that's the thing. And that's you love to see it when these guys come through post-injury or as a result of an injury, and they either fill in at the level or above the level of the guy that they're replacing. Mm-hmm. So like Rayshon's like piece de resistance this season. This season was the 101-yard touchdown return against the Giants, when it's like it was like the arguable like, was that a touchdown? He may have got over the line, but it's like, no, that ball came out and he took it 100 yards, and that's been like the whole thing he's done all season. So I think this is great because there's so much inconsistency at DB play that like you're sitting there looking and you're like, oh, I got Kyle Hamilton and he put up 40, but then he put up 7. And we've been blessed for having Antoine Winfield come back, but then that's come at the cost of Tyke Smith because they can't both be healthy at the same time. It's not fair. And there's like it's just so rare to sort of see these consistent guys that come through as like an injury performer, and then he's not booming, but he is giving you what you need and what you want. Like if you're putting Coby Bryant in, you're not sitting there going, this is my safety one, I'm expecting him to win me my week. You're putting him in there and you're going like, right, I need to make sure I'm not getting a 0. I'm not getting crushed, and then I can play for variance at other positions, either in my, if it's just an IDP league only, like at my D line, like now I can play a Nik Bonitto or a Trey Hendrickson or something, someone who's going to go out and try win me my week because I've got my baseline and my consistency set there. So no, I'm a big fan of Coby.
My only, if I can argue with myself for a second and be my own devil's advocate, a slight concern about the fact he's playing deep so often makes me wonder, will we see these big dips, these big boom or bust weeks? I don't know. Possibly, but it's not enough to scare me off, and I like a lot of the things that are trending in his direction as I outlined a moment ago. So I think that's the main thing is it's like what's going to happen in terms of like the tackle production now that Ernest is running in the middle.
And then also, like, we've had a couple of down weeks from Julian Love. Like, is that going to continue? Because he's been really, really good for like 2 straight seasons now.
Yep.
So it's what's going to happen on that front as well. Is that going to level out? And if Love is playing closer to the box, then it's like you've got Love and Ernest. Is that all the tackle production is going to be? And you're going to have to rely on Bryant to, break up some deep balls or to get a peanut punch and force a fumble or something like that. So, but it's like nobody is putting Coby Bryant in their lineup. And if he puts a dud in, like, you're going to deal with it, but you're not going to be like, oh, that's lost my week now. Like, I can't believe Coby Bryant has sunk my team. Like, if Coby Bryant sinks your team has already like hit it has hit the iceberg, and it is thousands of people in the water already.
Exactly, and it's when nominating players like this that I feel the need to remind people that we're not talking about the guys that we think are going to score the highest each week. We're not talking about the Hamiltons. We're not talking about the Derwin Jameses. We're not talking about the Winfields and the Budda Bakers. If it were, we'd be nominating these guys in this section every week. We're talking about the guys who we might be unsure on. So we're, sorry, not Budda. Yeah, Budda. I think he's the kind of guy that you're probably like wondering, can I put him in my lineup and can I trust him? I think he's a pretty solid bet. So, dislikes.
That's it. Can I flex him and give me something? Well, I mean, it's just this whole episode has just been me like just being a party pooper, and I'm glad that I need to take I'm glad that we haven't got my little Twitter handle up so people don't know where to find me, and I just lurk and I don't actually post so people don't know where to find me, because the Packers hive is going to come for me, because my dislike is Xavier McKinney. And how can I dislike the guy who is safety 2 halfway through the season?
How?
Like and wow, because he's got 5 interceptions. Like he's got 6 interceptions. He is so interception reliant. Like he's got 7 out of 8 games have been great games because he's got 6 picks in 6 of them, and he's got a sack in the other one. Like, his tackle floor is so low and his interception pace is unsustainable. He's got six interceptions halfway through the season, right? So that would give him like a 13 interception pace for the season. Since 2010, only 2 players have recorded 10 or more interceptions. And that was Trayvon Diggs 2 years ago, and it was Xavier Howard 3 years ago. Like, so he has gotten most of the interceptions that he's going to get for this year already. He's averaging 4.5 tackles a game. Like, there's no tackle floor whatsoever from him from the safety position. He is big play or he is nothing. And he has had 7 big plays that has given him 7 great weeks. And I don't think that he's getting the interception this week because Goff's thrown 4 picks all season. 8 games. He's thrown 4 picks. Now, Green Bay's at home. Goff has predominantly played the majority of his games in a dome, so I am a little bit worried about Goff on the road, and because of that, McKinney's probably going to get a pick, and people are going to be like, this guy doesn't know anything what he's talking about. I'm not even going to read his article anymore. And nobody is sitting Xavier McKinney. Like, there is not a single person that is going to watch this, listen to this, play IDP fantasy football that is sitting Xavier McKinney this week. And I'm not telling you to sit Xavier McKinney this week. I'm just saying the dude is the safety number 2 at the moment so far. Do not be surprised if he does not finish as the safety number 2 for this week. And you look and you're like, oh, I got 6 points from Xavier McKinney. That sucks.
Yeah, and that I'm glad you said that, because people listening to this might hear what you're saying right there and think Aaron does not like Xavier McKinney, and that's
Aaron doesn't know ball.
And that's not what you're saying, is it? You're merely saying that you don't think he can continue to like intercept the ball at the rate that he is so far over the course of many more games, and you think that might start this week. And that's a fair that's a fair conclusion to arrive on.
Yeah, I'm not saying he's not going to get any more picks this season, because he puts himself in a position. Like, the reason he's gotten so many picks, like they're not looking for him on the fit. They're not Jameis Winston staring him down and then throwing the ball straight to him. It's not that. He has amazing instincts, and he puts himself in position to make amazing plays. Like, I'm terrified that after this goes out, that both Kyle and Joey are going to come for me and be like, "Yo, we need words," like because McKinney is great. I reckon he's probably the best free agent signing of the 2023-24 offseason. But it's more the fact that at 6 interceptions through 8 games is an unsustainable pace. He is going to have games where he doesn't get a pick. And I think this week is one of those games. He will have more picks this season. I just don't think he gets one this week.
Right there with you. I agree with you. And I find it bizarre to think that anyone could think otherwise.
I mean, I don't think anything's bizarre anymore when it comes to fantasy football. Like I refuse to be surprised anymore. It's just you can't get me anymore, guys. I've seen it all.
Let's challenge anyone that does think otherwise to revisit this at the end of the season and find out and work out if McKinney's intercepted the ball on more than 75% of the games he's played, because it's very unlikely.
Man, if someone, you know what, if McKinney finishes the season, so what is, it's going to make me do maths. What's 75% of 17 games? What are we looking at? That would be like 13 picks? He's not going to do it. It's not even worth working it out. Let's just leave it with this. No. McKinney's an excellent safety. If he gets 13 picks,
he's an excellent
I'll donate to Joey or Kyle's favorite charity. You know, like I'll do something for Green Bay fans.
No, I think you need to donate to every Green Bay fan's charity who's listening to this show.
All 3 of them.
Oh, shots fired! Right.
Oh, they turned off after I said Xavier McKinney. I disliked him. They were like, "Nope, bye bye."
Come back. We love McKinney. My guy is Julian Blackmon. Everyone knows he's been overshadowed by his teammate and partner at safety, Nick Cross. That's no secret. But Blackmon has shown signs of life in the last 2 games, 17 tackles in that span. But he's still playing a very deep role. And this week faces the Vikings, who are bottom 3 in tackle production allowed to opposition safeties, which to my mind makes Blackmon a little bit of a worry. It's kind of hard to drop him on the basis of what we've seen in the last few games. But I don't know how you feel about this, Aaron. Have no issue in streaming my defensive backs, so I am quite happy to sit Blackmon this week on the basis that I think I can very easily find somebody else to replace him who has a better matchup, who is used in the box a little more, and who has been better over the course of 8 games or 7 games if they've had their bye, not just the last 2 games.
So I've written about both Blackmon and Cross on multiple different weeks. And I think I've taken every possible side of the argument. Like I've written about it and been like, oh, if the question is Blackmon and Cross, the answer is Cross. And then I've been like, oh, if the question is Blackmon and Cross, the answer is Blackmon. And then I finally went, I was like, if the question is Blackmon and Cross, the answer is both. And then I finally came to if the question is Blackmon and Cross, the answer is neither. Like, I think I have literally taken all 4. Like, I'm arguing with myself at this point, because I don't know which one I prefer, because Cross is he's slowed down from his psychotic tackle pace that he had at the beginning of the season. Like, I think through the first 4 weeks, 4 of the top 5 tacklers or 3 of the top 5 tacklers was EJ Speed, Zaire Franklin, and Nick Cross. Like, they all had 50 tackles through 3 weeks because they played 40 more snaps than any other team on the defensive side of the ball. Like, it was just insane. But that pace has come right down, and it's now sort of leveled out a little bit. And it's now at the point where Blackmon has sort of caught up to Cross, and then neither one of them is really standing out. And I have to make the choice because I have them both in a league. I've got both. I've got those 2. I've got Jalen Petre and I've got Jesse Bates, and I've got to fill 2 safety spots. And I'm like, I don't know what I don't know what to do. It's just I think the loss of Darisaw for the Vikings. Obviously, they just traded for Cam Robinson in the past day, and I think that's going to create a lot of opportunities on the back end, because I feel like Darnold is going to like he's going to be a little bit more trigger happy. And then I think the Colts with Flacco under center, as we've seen when they played the Steelers with him under center, and I can't remember the other game that he won, but the Colts offense fires completely differently, meaning that this is going to be a more pass orientated game. So I think that the opportunities for tackles are not going to be as sort of abundant, but maybe the opportunities for pass breakups might be. So you might sort of, what you might lose in the tackle production from Blackmon, you might be able to make up with like a batted ball here or there, but still it's not a decision that I really want to be trying to make, and I'm going to try look somewhere else. Like I think I'm probably going to roll out Bates and Petrie in the league where I've got them both. Yeah,
interesting. I'd go with Cross every time still. He's by far the more targeted of the two, which also helps his tackle numbers. He plays near the line of scrimmage, which also helps his tackle numbers. I'm getting excited about Blackmon sort of recording 8 tackles, 9 tackles a game in the last 2, whereas Cross has done that in all but I think 2 games this season. So maybe I'm creating in my mind a bigger gap between the two than really is there.
I don't
at the end of the season,
think so.
Maybe they'll be closer than they actually be. But I much prefer Cross, and I never imagined I'd be saying this at this point in the season. So, Aaron, that wraps up the show.
Amazing.
Thank you very much for coming on. If for no other reason than to remind our audience about how you got the better of me with that Ed Oliver bet. But no, seriously, I do love having you on anytime we do these things. So thank you very much. People may not see, as you mentioned earlier on, a huge amount of your content because some of the times you are, as I mentioned before, the engine or the glue.
A poor marketer.
The glue that holds a lot of what we do here together. But your marketing efforts recently have improved, as you said. So please tell everyone where they can find you and your content on X.
So, well, on X, you can find me at IDP Oz. The accent isn't just for show. That's actually something that I was born with. And you can find me at the IDPshow.com. I am the degenerate who writes the weekly recap article that gets posted on a Tuesday. I sit down and I watch as many games as humanly possible on multiple TVs to be able to tell you what happened, not just from the box score, but also from my own eyes, and then also from various different mediums and such like that for people that provide data for us. So something I've started doing this week, and then you can also hear Bobby, Adam, and Josh talking about me ad nauseum on the show every time I write something in the show doc that makes them chuckle. So that's where you'll find me. And mate, this has been an absolute joy. I've been chewing your ear off. I've just looked like we've only been recording for an hour and a half. I've been chewing your ear off for like 3 hours. So thank you for putting up with me.
It's been an absolute chore. No, I mean, I'm joking. It's been my pleasure. You are a star. It's been an excellent show. Thank you very much. To our listeners, again, as I mentioned every week, and I mention it not because I have to, but because I want to, whether you're listening on Spotify, Apple, watching us on YouTube, we are extremely grateful for you for giving up your time to listen to us. Thank you very much. Please subscribe to our channels and make sure you don't miss out on any future episodes. I will be back again next week with our guest interview feed, where you can hear from the brightest voices in IDP minds every week. I point to my left, my right. Good luck with your week 9 matchups, and I'll see you again next week for more of the same. Bye for now.
This was the IDP After Show.